everybody, welcome to the GWOT podcast, and I've got a special guest here today, Andy Vogel. Vogel is a combat aviation advisor, special mission aviator that I deployed with back in 21?
21, yeah.
21. So it's already,
Yep.
dude, 3 years ago.
It's hard to believe.
That's freaking insane. So he is, unlike Bobby Barton, who was lucky 13, he is number 14. So if there was any bad juju that was going to catch up with us from 13, it might be on this one. So, so Andy, keep me honest.
I'll try.
And anyway, all right, man. So once again, welcome to GWOT podcast, and we are mobile. So, dude, we haven't. Well, full disclosure. I just bought another piece of property out in the middle of Blackwater State Forest, and this guy helped me close on it with my financing. So we haven't seen each other in since you retired. What year was that?
2023. Talked to each other quite a bit, but
What's 2023?
well, the beginning. So my last day of work would have been October of 22.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Dang, man, time freaking flies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, before we get too deep in the weeds on, hey, deployments and, all that stuff, dude, where does all this, I know a little bit about your backstory from being stuck in the team room with you, the basement,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, where'd you grow up at?
So kind of bounced around quite a bit.
Okay.
Born in central Pennsylvania. We moved to New York City when I was about 4.
Moved out where again?
To New York City.
Really?
Yeah, we lived in Staten Island for 4 or 5 years.
You're kidding me, man.
No.
My grandfather came from Staten Island.
Really?
Yeah, he used to work the docks down there, like back in the in the early 30s.
Holy cow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Staten Island.
Yeah, I was there in the mid 80s, late 80s.
Okay.
When you're that little, you don't really think about like you're living in New York City. So it was kind of lost on me the fact that that's such a kind of a cool place to live at one point,
Yeah. How far? I mean, like, how far is that from like Manhattan or?
So we could see the Twin Towers from our front porch. We lived on the top of a hill.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Crazy thing was I was watching. Since you mentioned Twin Towers, we're coming up on the anniversary. I was me and the boys, the younger kiddos that are like 10 and 12. We were watching. They've never seen Men in Black, so we were looking for something to watch. And we were watching Men in Black, and there's like 2 or 3 significant scenes where the Twin Towers are in the backdrop, and it's like, dude,
I know.
that's crazy.
It gets me every time I see a movie, like one of the older ones.
Yeah.
And every time.
Yeah, it's like they're not there anymore. It's
Yeah.
like, ugh. Anyway.
Yeah.
You don't realize how iconic it is until you see something like that, and it's like, damn, man.
It's something you think is going to be there forever.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then it's not.
I mean, I remember when King Kong ran and jumped from one to the other. Anyway, so sorry, man. Go ahead, keep rolling. So you could see Twin Towers.
Yeah, so you could see the Twin Towers from the front porch. Not much of my life happened there, but from there we ended up moving back to central Pennsylvania for a few years.
Okay.
We ended up living on a horse farm there, so we kind of went from one extreme to the other.
Okay, so this whole thing you're doing now is not a far cry from what you've lived before.
No.
Dude, I thought you just kind of like pulled this out of your fifth point of contact and said, hey, that's something I would do.
Let's start a barn.
Yeah. So at this point, I mean, what did Dad do for work?
So both my parents were kind of in the nonprofit, I think. So my dad worked for Project Hospitality, which was a homeless shelter in New York.
Okay.
And then my mother worked for, I think it was another form of a homeless shelter, but it was also like a preschool. Like they gave the children a safe place to, to live. And to spend their day.
Okay.
You know, so I guess it was like a preschool or a daycare for, you know, kids with parents without means.
Gotcha.
So that's what brought them out there. My mother was a school teacher by trade, and that kind of fit what she was doing. And but I guess we ended up moving back to Pennsylvania though, and a few years later. But that's about the time my parents split up, and my dad stayed in New York, and we went back to Pennsylvania with my mother, and that's when we got the barn. So we grew up raising, you know, just trail horses and riding around and living the country life.
Okay. No, I mean, that's an awesome upbringing for a kid.
And,
any brothers or sisters at this point?
Yeah. So I've got my oldest sister's 9 years older than me.
Okay.
And then I've got my second sister is 2 years older than me. And then I've got a younger brother, and he's actually still in the Air Force. He's in the National Guard out in Washington.
Oh, really? Whereabouts?
He's at JBLM.
Okay.
So he works with the Guard out there. He just put Lieutenant Colonel on.
Oh, so you got one of those brothers.
Oh, yeah. He's pretty cool for an officer.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good deal. There's one in every family. You remember when Dennis Luzak? I got to get him on this podcast. Remember when Dennis, when he retired? You remember Dennis Luzak?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think I was there for that one.
Yeah, he had retired, and his brother had become an officer, and it was just kind of cool. His brother facilitated his retirement, and it was the chemistry was awesome between. Oh yeah, I mean there was definitely some rivalry there, but it was fun. It was his younger brother who decided to go off to college, and become an O.
Yep.
And so it was pretty cool watching those two.
So it's funny.
Bounce stories off each other.
It's funny though, because Jared Cordell was supposed to do my retirement ceremony.
Okay, yeah.
He was out of town. He was literally gonna drive in, do it, and then go back to. I think he was up in Alabama doing a TDY. The day before my retirement ceremony, his wife got attacked by a dog while she was walking their dog. So he called me up and he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't do it."
I remember that now.
The day before.
Yeah.
I was like, totally understand. 5 minutes later, my brother pulls in the driveway.
Oh, that's right.
I'm like, "Tag, you're it."
Yeah, flick that booger.
I was like, "You're doing the retirement ceremony."
Oh, that's so cool. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, I printed out basically every EPR I ever had, and I just handed it to him. Instead of like hanging out drinking with us all night,
right?
He's sitting at the kitchen table, like taking notes and doing his duty of figuring out what he's going to say. So,
good stuff, man.
Yeah,
good stuff.
But yeah, so I mean, we grew up going to a little small town elementary school in central PA, and just kind of enjoyed that life. We'd take the horses out on trail rides. We had 50 acres backed up against, I think it was over 2,000 acres of state farm.
Oh wow!
Kind of like your new place is set up. So
nice.
You could go out in the morning and you wouldn't come home till the sun was down.
Dude, isn't that awesome?
It is.
Yeah. We haven't moved out to the property yet. I mean, we already live on 18 acres out in the country, but yeah, just knowing that the boys are going to have that within about a year is going to be nice. Them just going out and doing their thing. All right, so school.
All right.
Good student, crappy student, great athlete. What?
I was never an athlete, and I was probably an average student, just quiet.
Okay.
Kept to myself as far as like the classroom goes. Probably started to come out of my shell a little bit 11th and 12th grade.
Gotcha.
Just doing the normal, hanging with the guys, running around drinking, carrying on.
Right.
Causing trouble. But yeah, most of my school was pretty mild.
Okay.
Just kind of laid low.
So what was the inspiration for, for the military? Because it doesn't sound like you had family that was military, or did you?
No, not. I mean, my grandparents were in the military.
Okay, what'd they do?
My mother's father, I never met him, but he passed when my mother was 12. But he was in the Army, and I don't think he was in World War II. I think it was after World War II. But he was in the Army for several years, and then he actually transitioned over to the Air Force.
Smart guy.
Yeah. So about the time the Air Force was, getting itself independent. But I want to say he was military police.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and then I don't know much about my dad's service or my dad's father's service. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it was kind of scary for me because I didn't really know anybody firsthand that had served.
All right.
Super close to me, and
so just too many hula movies, or what? They just said, "Hey, man."
It was weird. I was kind of floating around because I didn't join right out of high school.
Okay.
So I was going to a community college. I was working at a furniture store unloading semi trucks and putting the big furniture in the racks.
Okay.
And just kind of bouncing around, and I just had trouble seeing where life was going to go.
Right.
Just didn't. You're like, all right, so I'm not really interested in school, not really interested in clocking into work every day and living that life. And the Air Force started to seem like a bit more of an option for me. And then I forget how, but I ran into a guy that used to be a flight engineer on C-5s.
Okay.
And he brought me up to Dover Air Force Base, brought me into his old squadron. He was retired. And we just walked around base. It was just kind of like a little meet and greet a few of his old buddies, and that's pretty much the what really got me into it. And the interesting part is this would have been in 2002. No. 01 or 02.
Okay.
And we go into his old squadron, which was the 3rd Airlift Squadron at Dover. He introduced me to a couple loadmasters because through talking, you couldn't become a flight engineer right out of basic. So you had to have a maintenance background. They may have changed it since, but
gotcha.
That's how it was.
Okay.
So he starts introducing me to a few loadmasters, and then the SARM chief, which was a retired chief, but he was in charge of the SARM at Dover. And
explain any acronyms.
Sorry.
I always got to stop and backtrack and say, oh, by the way, this stands for.
So SARM is Squadron Aviation Records Management. Okay. And so basically they track a lot of the currency that aircrew have, as well as all the flight hours and so on.
Gotcha.
Flying events that you track. So, I mean, the records would probably be in shambles without them.
Oh,
They
yeah.
keep the aircrew honest.
Yeah.
The cool part is down the road, I ended up being in the 3rd Airlift Squadron.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. And a couple of the guys that I met were like Dover icons. So Chief Hannigan, I think it was Hannigan was his name. He was still in charge of the SARM whenever I was at Dover, and he passed recently. And I mean, it was just like big news across the aircrew community, the Dover community.
Oh wow!
But I mean, he ran that place. Like, and everybody knew.
Right.
He was in charge. And then Chief Johnson, I think it was. He was a staff sergeant at the time, but he ended up. I kind of followed him around a little bit. We never actually served together. But we were in the same places at different times throughout my career. But I just thought think it's cool whenever I look back. It's like before I was even in, I met some of these people that, influenced different things throughout my career.
Right. So you mentioned this is already roughly 2001, 2002 time frame.
Yeah.
Let's backtrack just a tad bit.
Yeah.
9/11 kicks off. Are you still in high school? Are you in college? Where are you at?
I'm unloading furniture trucks at the furniture store.
Okay.
When the towers were hit. So, and we'd moved, since Pennsylvania, we'd moved to Maryland as well.
Oh, okay.
So there was one more move.
All right.
So my mother went back to teaching, and she got a job teaching at elementary school in Maryland.
Okay.
So.
Well, how was that move? Let's. What age were you with that?
I was middle school.
Okay.
And by that point, we had gone to. I went to kindergarten in one school. I went to first, second grade in another school, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth in another school, seventh in another school. So then by the time I got to 8th grade, we were moved pretty permanently in Maryland.
Okay.
I think all of us kids were like, we need to stay put.
Yeah.
Like,
that's pretty rough.
Yeah, like we're tired of making new friends, new schools, all that. So once I was in 8th grade, the friends I made in 8th grade are the friends that I graduated with, the friends that I go home and see still.
Now, is it still country living for you, or did you guys move into a city?
No, we had 30 acres
okay.
out in the country, and still had the horses and all that. So it was just kind of less mountains.
Okay.
More soybean fields around us.
Gotcha.
And
that's cool that you guys could at least maintain that, because I know I took when I went from the Security Forces AGR of the 919, and when I went doing RPAs, remotely piloted aircraft, I ended up moving that because we homeschooled the kids,
right,
and so we had the flexibility to just uproot the whole family, and so we went to Alamogordo, and once again we're at the foot of the mountains, so there was still a degree of country living. But when we moved to Vegas, ultimately we got stuck in the subdivision. The kids were just jonesing for the outdoors. They hated living in the neighborhood, and it was pretty freaking funny. But so I wasn't sure if if you had been uprooted and plopped in the middle of a neighborhood or whatever. But that's good that you still had that. My boys would have gone nuts if it had been more than a year in a neighborhood. Yeah,
we actually lived in town for 1 year. That's where I went to 7th grade.
Okay.
So that was our first year in Maryland. But we just rented a house because we were, new place. We'd never been there. This is the 90s. You can't go on the internet and figure out, what's out there.
Right.
So we lived in town, and that was a little bit brutal. I mean, you had a bunch of kids that used to running around doing whatever we want, making all kinds of noise.
Yeah.
Living in a town setting.
It's like having shackles on.
Yeah. So.
All right. So you guys finally. So fast forward back to 9/11.
So 9/11. This is actually a pretty wild day for me. So I mentioned my dad stayed in New York.
Right.
So
yeah. Okay.
So he's working in Manhattan at the time. He's working for the Ronald McDonald House in Manhattan.
Okay.
And that's up on 72nd Street and First Ave. So Upper East Side, far away from the towers.
Right.
But he's living in Staten Island. So the only way to get there is take the ferry across down to Battery Park. And then from Battery Park, you take the train uptown.
So I'm assuming Battery Park is there at the south.
All the way to the south tip.
Okay.
Yeah. So his post office box was in Bowling Green, which is kind of getting towards the towers, and his bank was actually in the first floor of the towers.
Oh wow.
So he had taken the ferry across that morning, went to the post office, and he felt the ground rumble. And they everybody just kind of stopped, looked around, what is that? But nothing else happened because they were inside. They didn't see anything, hear anything. So he gets his mail. Got a check. His IRS refund check was in the mail.
Right.
And so he's going to go to the bank. Would be his next stop. So he walks out, and he said everybody's just standing still outside the post office.
Right.
Looking up in the air. And he said, like, he just looked up and saw the fire in the towers.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Dude, I had no clue.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he obviously abandoned the plan. He started going back towards the ferry. And I think, if I remember correctly, on his way back to the ferry is when the second plane hit.
Okay.
And so, I mean, at that point, it's just chaos, you know, because the first one, everybody, the whole world thought it was probably an accident, you know.
Yeah.
The second one hits, you're like, that life just changed. The world just changed.
Dang.
So he ends up, because he was so close to the ferry still and was already on his way back before the second one hit, he was able to get on the ferry, and the ferry starts going back to Staten Island. And on his way across, you know, everybody's just standing at the back of the boat just watching. And then he saw the first tower go down.
Oh, holy cow. I mean, I remember sitting in my living room with some stranger I didn't even know. I mean, that's another story, but he was a military guy. I knew that, and I told him, hey, get in the house, man, you need to watch this. Told him what had happened. We're sitting there. Mm-hmm. And just watching that tower go down live on TV. Actually, he had gotten, they still had beepers back then, and he, while he was sitting there, was being beeped by his unit. I don't know what this guy did. You know, who he was, you know.
Where were you?
In my living room.
What base were you at? Or
oh no, I was here.
Here.
Yeah, okay. I was working for the Department of Juvenile Justice. I'd been out of the Army from the Ranger camp for a little bit. And,
okay.
You know, and I'd met this guy, and you know, we chatted, and I knew he was military. And the minute I realized, because once again, when I heard, I'm thinking, okay, I'd seen pictures of a Cessna hanging out of the tower, like back in the mid '80s. So I'm like, all right, well. And then when I get home from dropping Will, my oldest, off at school, that was his birthday. I realized, oh, holy cow, dude.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got home, the second one had already hit. And it's like, holy freaking cow. But I say that to say, I can't even imagine being there on the back of one of those ferries and watching that happen in person via over the TV. So you guys must be going freaking nuts at this point.
Yeah, I left work because you couldn't get a cell phone to call. Like, you couldn't get the signal to go through.
Right.
So I was trying to call my dad, and it was just like, I forget what it did, but it just, either a call just dropped off or said there's no service or something like that. Now,
had you guys been, and obviously it's your dad, so proximity and how close you are is probably irrelevant. It's your father, but had you guys had a pretty good relationship over the years?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're pretty tight, both of you?
Yeah.
Good. So, so obviously that's amplified then.
Yeah, so you're just trying to figure out, like, I mean, you know, he doesn't work in the towers. He's not going to be, like, if he was there, it would be an anomaly, but it's like, you just want to make sure.
There's your freaking anomaly, yeah.
Right, yeah.
In the post office.
I know.
Oh, gosh. All right, keep going, man.
So that was my day, obviously. Like, I just remember talking to the warehouse manager and saying, you know, my dad works in Manhattan, all that. And, you know, I got to try and get through to him. So I just went home, and obviously you're just kind of glued to the TV the rest of the day. Yeah. Watching, and I mean, I still remember that night. I was at a neighbor's house, and you just look up at the sky, and there's no air traffic, and you're in Maryland. You've got DC, Philadelphia, Baltimore, you know, major airports all around us. Yeah. Nothing in the sky. nothing.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was, that was pretty surreal.
Yeah. I interviewed a guy. In fact, you guys, episode 9, part 2, a guy, former Marine Alex Chapman. He's a pastor up here in Crestview, and he was in the Pentagon when the plane hit. Yeah, it actually hit underneath the floor he was on, and I had no idea. It's amazing as you're doing these podcasts and you hear people's stories, the connections that you didn't even have a clue that are there, and it's like, dang, dude. The proximity to historical events and all that stuff is just phenomenal. But all right, so how long does it take for you to actually get through and make a connection that, hey, Dad, you're all right. Hey, life is going to be okay.
I think it was around dinner time.
Okay, so it was the same day.
Yeah.
Thank God for that,
I think
man.
so. Because I think he finally made it back home. I forget the exact sequence of events, but it was later in the day, like definitely after like 5 o'clock.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, just touch base, and he was in. I mean, looking back, I mean, I forget, I was 19 years old or something when that happened.
Right.
So it was kind of lost on me in the moment. But looking back, I mean, he was in really no condition to have a conversation that day. Yeah. You know, you know that whenever you saw that tower fall, there's people inside of it.
Yeah.
So.
And at that point, we thought there was maybe 25,000 in each building, we thought.
Yeah.
50,000 total. We had no clue as to what the body count would end up being.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
How did that affect him over the years? Or did it? Did he talk about it much?
He won't talk about it. Like, okay. The most he'll do is tell us what basically I just explained. But like a lot of he keeps a very surface level. You know, he doesn't go into the details of each step. It's more just the wave tops.
No, that's obviously you guys leaving when you did, your parents splitting up, and that's his life every day. That's his routine.
Yep.
Every day for how many years that point?
At that point, almost 20.
Yeah, that's dang. Talk about having a guy having his life uprooted.
Yeah.
Wow. So. All right, so did that play a factor at all in you saying, hey, I think I'm going to go?
Probably subconsciously.
Yeah, I would think so.
You start seeing the build up, and a lot of it was quietly done at first. The immediate response was pretty quiet.
Yeah.
But then you start seeing the build up, and you're like, that combined with I wasn't happy with what I was doing at home, and it seemed like the right answer at the right time.
Right.
But I was still growing up, and I still had my buddies, so I was kind of wanted to have my cake and eat it too. I was like, I wanted to be in the military, but I wanted to be home. So I came up with this plan that if I try and get stationed at Dover, I can do that.
Right.
Right. So I joined, and I think you put the list down of like 5 career fields that you wanted to do. So I put like loadmaster, I put flight engineer. I really wanted to be a loadmaster.
Right.
So then I put flight engineer since I knew I couldn't get it. And then I still had to put 3 other ones. So I put like aerial gunner.
That would have been a good job.
Yeah.
That would have been
I would have liked that one too.
Yeah.
I think I put aerial linguist on there. I was pretty sure I wasn't smart enough for that anyway.
I know. I look back on that and I'm like, French kicked my freaking tail, dude.
And then I put air battle manager as well. So I knew I wanted to fly, but I really wanted to be a load.
Right.
So I just tried to stack the deck in my favor as good as possible. And luckily I got picked up to be a loadmaster. Went into delayed entry.
Okay.
waited about 6 months for that, and then I shipped off in January of 2003.
Okay.
So
Wow.
went down to San Antonio, and
that's crazy. So you're going through basic.
yep.
I mean, was it? I mean, by the time, so I went through Navy basic, and then I went through 5 years after that. I went through Army basic, and my recruiter, after the towers had gone down, I told my wife, I said, hey, I got to get back in, and initially I'd gone to, was considering going back into the Navy,
Right.
And then I'm like, hey. All my 11 Bravo buddies were saying, hey, go to Duke. So when I went down there to get into there, my recruiter was out of Pensacola, and he's like, hey, you want to go through Air Force basic training? And I'm like, dude, I've already been through 2 basics. No, I'm not.
Isn't there a waiver for that?
I'm not, I'm already an NCO, and I kept my rank as an E5, which is nice.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm like, dude, I'm not going through Air Force Basic. So you go through Air Force Basic. By that time, I guess your aircrew fundamentals and all that is right there at
Medina.
Oh, okay, Medina. Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's right. Because when I did RPAs, they had consolidated aircrew fundamentals and all that. I think it was right there on Lackland.
Okay.
I think they had consolidated everything there.
What year was that?
I might be off. That would have been 2011.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you go through your aircrew fundies.
Yep.
How was that? Did you have a good time with that one?
Yeah, I guess so.
I had the joy of everything I did was as a prior enlisted.
Yeah.
So they didn't screw with me, but you're like...
We were in phase 1 of tech school, so you still had your little 341 cards you had to carry everywhere.
Is that your chit if you get in
Yeah.
trouble? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's like a demerit card, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think at that point you're just laying low.
Yeah, being the gray man.
Yeah.
Staying under the radar.
Yeah.
So is it obviously, I mean, you're a civilian going into the military. Was it a massive shell shock for you as far as,
I think so.
culture shock, or were you like pretty low key?
Yeah, I think there was a whole lot of kind of what did I get myself into? And, I signed up for 6 years, so 6 years when you're 19 or 20.
Did you get was there a bonus?
$4,000.
Dude, you work for cheap.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
$4,000. You didn't spend it all in one place, did you?
Right? I probably did.
What about now guys that had joined the Navy that did 6 years, they ended up getting like E4 out of their tech school.
Yeah,
Did you get anything like that?
E3, I think, 20 weeks. I think you had to have 20 weeks in, and yeah.
So accelerated promotion.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I think, I mean, I think I got paid while I was in tech school, and it was like $700 or $800 every 2 weeks. It was like,
okay. Yeah.
it's funny to think about now.
Note to self: don't fumble around with the radio because while you're shooting a video.
Yeah, your volume thing's not a fidget spinner.
So well, I noticed it was on. I'm like, I'm going to shut it off, and then I'm like, bloop. So yeah, we're back and rolling again. I don't know. We didn't miss anything. So okay, so what ends up being your? I mean, so you stayed out of trouble the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was like a to where sure.
No, I mean, well,
other than maybe some stupid stuff.
just finding a way to sneak a few drinks here and there,
Okay.
But
So where's your first? Where is your first duty station? Where does that end up being?
Dover. My plan worked out.
Nice. Hey, isn't it great when you take a calculated risk and it works out?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I managed it, but it worked out.
Okay.
I think the timing of, so right after I got to tech school, shock and awe. Like we went into Iraq.
Okay.
So that was, I mean, the airlift requirement on that went through the roof. So I think pretty much if you wanted to go somewhere, they're like, go.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we were just starting the war in Iraq, so they just needed people everywhere.
Now your C-130s, you C-5s?
C-5s.
What are, okay, I'm assuming Dover. I've
Yep.
always associated Dover with C-5s. The heavy airlift.
So Dover, man, we just showed up and all the old guys talking about, the old days when they would do these channel missions where you'd go from like Dover to England to Italy to Suda Bay to, fill in the blank, nice place next to a beach.
Right.
And then they would just backtrack it and it would take 2 to 3 weeks. And now we're doing Dover to Rota, Spain, down to Iraq, back to Rota and back to Dover.
Okay.
Over and over and over and over again.
Wow.
And then all the old guys are like, oh, this sucks. You guys will never know the real C5 mission of all this, Gucci travel.
Right.
So,
how many trips in and out of Iraq did you end up making?
I don't even.
Can't count.
No.
Dang.
I was on C5s for, let me see, I got there at the end of 03, so all of 04, 05, 06, and part of 07, so 3.5 years-ish.
Okay.
And I mean, we were just doing back-to-back missions.
Okay.
If you weren't on a mission, you were probably sitting in alert.
All right. So at this point, they've, for the most part, we own the, we own the airspace.
Yeah.
So what, ever any time with any in-flight emergencies going over, or anything interesting that happened? Any anti-air coming in on that SAM footprint or anything like that?
Not a ton in my C5 days.
Okay.
We did get into some of that in my C-130 days.
So when do you swap? At what point are you swapping over to?
So I went from C5s to C-17s at Dover.
How'd you like C-17s?
I liked it. It was a little bit more, I mean, compared to C5s, it was a little bit more tactical.
Okay.
Those
babies are Cadillacs, man.
They're so smooth. There's so much power. And they're so much more versatile and require a lot less support than a C5.
Gotcha.
So like you land a C5 anywhere, like you need a whole freaking team to come out and take care of the airplane.
Gotcha. I'd only done one, maybe 2 flights I think it was 1 flight on a C5, and that was in the 80s, doing the MAC flights. My dad was, we were in Guam, and they had, back then, Guam was considered a remote. It might still be considered remote, but you got EML, is what the Navy called it, Environmental Morale Leave.
Okay.
And twice a year, you could head back to the States. And we did it every summer. And one year, it was either the old crayon C-141s, which I hated.
Flew one of those once.
Oh, dude, I jumped one time, and it was the worst freaking jump. And then one time we actually got a C5 all the way back through Hickam and back to either Edwards or Norton Air Force Base in California. Other than that, I've never been on a C5 since. But it was cool as a kid getting on it. It's like, dang, it was so freaking
It's easy to forget how big they are, too.
Yeah.
Like, you just walk up and you're just, even though I flew it, it's still, if I were to walk up today, I'm just like, geez.
Yeah, we boarded via the ramp, and it was like a freaking cavern. It was so flipping big. So anyway, you do C-17s.
Yep. So I wanted to stay at Dover. Go figure. I met my wife while I was on C5s,
Okay.
and she was pregnant with our daughter when I found out we were going to C-17s.
Okay.
And trying to get my dates right. My daughter was born in November of 06, and then we went to
What day?
November 11th, Veterans Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So she stole my holiday. But we went out to Altus for CE-17 school, and
Altus. I know. Redneck Riviera
Yeah,
here,
man.
Boiling Creek. Woohoo!
And so we went out there, I guess, in February, March, April, sometime like that.
Altus
So-
is Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we all went together. We lived in a hotel with an infant for 4 months of
nice.
of C-17 school,
Okay.
and went right back to Dover when we were done.
All right.
Then, so I did my first actual deployment in 2009. That was C-17 deployment. So I guess in that time, the 3rd Airlift Squadron had switched from C-5s to C-17s.
Okay.
So whenever we came back from C-17 school, we actually were a C-17 squadron that did not have a single airplane. We had not received our first delivery yet.
Oh, wow.
So we got back in, I think it was June, and I think our first plane showed up in like July or something.
Oh, okay.
July or
So
August.
not too far after.
No, so we were going up to McGuire for like currency items and whatnot.
How far was McGuire from there?
Just 2 hours.
That's not too shabby.
Yeah, no, not bad. But yeah, so we did that deal from 07 until 2010, 09.
Okay. And
that's-
once again, the constant rotation again?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same. Yeah, I mean, gone for 2 weeks, home for a week or two, gone for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Just kind of back and forth. Had our second kid in 2010. He was actually born the day of the Haiti earthquake.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he was in the NICU for about 10 days, and then I think he was home for about 4 or 5 days, and I was on a plane down to Haiti.
How did that work for you guys? Because we had just adopted my daughter from Ethiopia. I was on adoption leave, or baby leave, if you will. And it's the only time that I was AGR at that point. And it's the only time where we actually got, it was just prior to me going. No, I was AGR at that point. It's the only time I'd ever been called off a leave. And they sent the daggers from the first, and then I had Colonel Weeks called all the daggers in from the 919th Security Forces, and we ended up, we did a quick mobilization. It was voluntary, and we were on our way down there into Haiti,
Okay.
like that freaking day. Yeah.
Damn.
So I never, other than a mission trip, I didn't get to set foot because there were so many platforms in the sky, in a holding pattern, that we got diverted to Puerto Rico. So
Okay.
how did you guys have any issues landing and initially, or did you get diverted or what?
No, I mean, so by the time I got there, we were about 2 weeks into the recovery efforts.
Okay, gotcha.
And it was weird though, because like when you're flying over water and around islands at nighttime, the water is black and there's lights on the island.
Yeah.
Well, this was opposite. Lights all over in the water. The island
Okay.
itself was pitch black,
Wow.
minus the area like right around the runway.
Right.
But that's the one thing I remember seeing going in is all these boats in the water, and as soon as you look up at the land, it was just darkness.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But we, unfortunately, we were bringing back, I think it was 14 college students and a professor
Okay.
that were killed in the earthquake.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. And this one kind of hits me a little bit hard. There was only 2 times that, I saw something on TV on like a personal level, like somebody talking about their kid,
Yeah.
or a close family member, and then I kind of participated in some way with that person.
Right.
So it was before I left. There was a guy, I just remember seeing a news conference, and this guy's down in Miami, I think, and he had been told that his daughter was found alive, and come down and you can meet her in Miami to bring her home.
Oh, no.
So he flies down, the family flies down. He gets down there and they say, like, basically, I'm sorry, we called the wrong person, or we misidentified somebody. We don't have your daughter. So, and he was a guy that had some means, I guess, and he held a press conference where he was basically just like pleading for our government to do more, just being a dad.
Yeah.
And I just remember him saying, like, Brittany, the name Brittany, over and over and over again. And when I was flying those people home, I looked at the manifest of the casualties, and it had a name on there, and I couldn't like place it right away.
Right.
But I knew I had heard that name. It was her.
Oh, gosh.
It was his daughter. It was just one of those moments that it's just like that pit in your stomach, and I mean it sucks no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? Like it just sucks. And it just adds that reality whenever you could picture her dad's face, and the people that loved her.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit more real.
Well, and not to mention, I mean, now you're a dad. Your oldest kid
It's about her age almost.
is a little girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that things hit you a lot harder when you're finally a parent.
Yeah.
To where as a young airman, or a young troop, young Marine, young sailor, whatever the case might be, some things just don't hit you until you're a father and you can. Yeah, dude, that sucks.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
what so you've done Iraq, you've done Haiti. At some point, had you started doing airlifts into Afghanistan?
Yeah, that was, I guess, my first few C-17 trips. We were starting to transition the focus over to Afghanistan.
Okay.
That big kind of pivot. And 2009, the deployment in 2009 was the big push. I mean, basically every single trip we did was taking a load of MRAPs. Don't ask me what the acronym stands for.
Yeah.
Big freaking truck.
Yeah.
I think we were loading them 2 at a time on a C-17, and then hauling them up to Bagram and Kandahar.
Gotcha.
And Mazar-e Sharif and all those. That's really when the Afghanistan part of my career really picked up. I know we'd been there for quite a while, but that was my first kind of taste. But then we went to C-130s, went to school in Little Rock, and my son, it was...
Dude, so I'm making this correlation, knowing how this ends to some degree.
Yeah.
Dude, what's up? Each plane gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Anyway, I digress. Rabbit hole.
I just... I guess I sucked so bad. They were like, we're going to make it simpler for you.
Yeah, yeah, and you end up on a freaking Ukrainian or Russian bird when it's all said and done. Dude,
We're like 2 propellers, a cargo box with nothing in it.
Yeah, you get promoted.
What can go wrong?
You get promoted to a more simpler bird each time. So, okay, so C-130s.
Yep. And
still out of Dover?
No.
Okay.
We were in a TFI, Total Force Integration.
Okay.
With the reserves.
Freaking reservists.
Blast. Freaking blast.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, and then.
Well, we're a lot more laid back than the uptight active duty types.
And the active duty leadership was like worried about, the relationship moving in, and like we're taking up their office space too.
Right.
So they're like, don't make any waves. And we're like, all right. Guess that means going with the reserves to the bar for lunch.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man.
But I mean, the difference was so cool. Especially I was a staff into a tech during that phase.
Right.
And you get to see kind of like leadership without that active duty spin on it.
Yeah.
Right. So like the kind of, I want to say it without like dissing anything else, right? But it's like leadership where you're going to work with that person for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like we're going to work together for 4 years. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to write your EPR, and then we're going to move away. It was true development.
Right.
And I think in a much more casual way.
Right.
So I think that's what I picked up a lot of that from the reserves in Mississippi, and because that was at Keesler. So,
oh, okay, gotcha.
So I mean, it was awesome. I mean, we were 400 miles away from our group and our wing leadership. So,
oh wow, nice.
Yeah. So I mean, it was, you come in, you do your job. It was almost like a vacation assignment.
Now you weren't with the Hurricane Hunters, were you?
No, they were in the 403rd wing, which was the reserve wing that we were associated with. They did 2 different squadrons.
Okay.
So they had the Slick C-130s, which were the Flying Jennies.
All right.
And then the Hurricane Hunters on the other side.
Okay.
So we sometimes flew their birds, but mostly just, we didn't really. 2 completely different missions.
I've got to ask, Flying Jennies, where the heck does that name come from?
I forget exactly, because their logo was like a pack mule.
Okay.
So I think a Jenny is a female mule.
Oh, okay.
I might be wrong. I might have just made that up.
Yeah. Well, in today's world, with the Air Force being so politically correct, God forbid you keep any World War II, nostalgia or anything like that. And obviously you don't need to have a naked woman on your aircraft.
Yeah.
But or scantily clad.
Well,
but there's always that, overshot of what's appropriate and what's not. But as you were saying, I'm sorry.
There was a unit up in Little Rock, and they were the GWOTs.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that's still a thing or not. But,
yeah. For all you guys out there, I think probably more prevalent. I don't know. Did you? So we sang Jodies, and usually it was about Jody coming in and stealing your girlfriend, or stealing your wife while you're away, or other nefarious activities. So was that?
Jody's not a good guy.
No, Jody needs his tail kicked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're down there at Keesler. How's Mama liking? How's the family liking that?
So,
the mic popped on. I shut it off, and it shuts off the video again. So yeah, we won't touch that button. So.
My wife might not like me for telling this story.
Okay.
But this is us leaving Dover to go to Mississippi. We're both from Pennsylvania, right?
Oh yeah. So you've been a Yankee the whole time.
Yeah. And we're at the TLF leaving Dover, and she's got like potted plants that she wants to put in the car at the last minute.
Gotcha. TLF.
Temporary lodging facility.
Yeah, and generally TLF is for families that are moving in or moving out of a base.
Yep.
That's your temporary housing. All right, go ahead.
So she's got a couple pots and the red ceramic thing, and she's trying to put them in the back of our Grand Cherokee, and I'm like, it is full. There's no room for anything. Like the truck's full, the pickup truck's full, the Jeep's full. Like we're out of room. I said you could just leave it. She takes that pot and just throws it across the parking lot. Total meltdown. Taking her away from everything she's known her whole life.
Right.
Her dad just looks at me. He's like, "She's your problem now." So.
Oh my goodness.
But Mississippi turned out to be awesome. Like.
Yeah, that's a nice area down there.
Yeah.
Keesler.
Yeah, and it was post Katrina. The BX and the commissary had just opened back up about a month before we got there.
What year is this again?
End of 2009, I think.
Okay, so question for you.
Yeah.
One of my deployments was to Katrina, but years later, not too long after, I think my boys used to wrestle, and in the off season, one of my boys, used to do cheer, but he would do all the flips and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Which shout out to the male cheerleaders out there. Their workouts were harder than some of the wrestling.
Wasn't George Bush the male cheerleader? George W.
I don't know. Maybe his brother Jeb was.
Maybe.
I don't know.
One of those guys was.
But they did a meet down there in Keesler. That's Biloxi, right?
Yep.
Okay. So while we're driving through there, all those old growth oaks that ended up getting slammed and destroyed, some dude went out there with a chainsaw and literally carved them into dolphins, into seahorses. Were those still there?
Yes.
Dude, it was so cool to see a guy that had kind of like repurposed those.
Yeah.
That was amazing. So they were still there at the time?
Yeah.
I wonder if they
still
are.
them and all that.
Yeah. Hopefully they preserved them and lasted.
I mean, I hope so. I think there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. Wasn't that amazing though?
It was cool. Because you're driving right down, I think it's 90.
Yeah.
Right on the beach there, and it's
yeah, the dude that did that was truly a craftsman.
Yeah.
But okay, so Mama chucks the plan. That's, military wives go through a lot.
They do.
Moving, and fortunately, because we homesteaded for the most part right here in Florida, one of the benefits of being a reservist is you're not having to move all the time unless you choose to move.
Yep.
But I remember my mom, packing up, dad was deployed or whatever, and it's a life,
a lot of times the squadrons kind of just take it for granted.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
So
what was Keesler like? You're flying slicks.
Yep.
Slick C-130s.
And it's flying a lot more locals, a lot less missions.
Okay.
Because obviously it takes a long time to get operational Keesler in a C-130.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest adjustment is I'm used to going and flying an operational mission like every month. And here we're home a lot. We're going TDY to Yuma to do military free fall, going out to JRTC, which is Joint Readiness Training Center in Alexandria, Louisiana. So a lot of just missions like that.
Gotcha.
And,
sorry, this function is not available in the current model.
Well, regretfully today, I have to tell you guys that I found out that two of our episodes, the one featuring Bobby Barton and the other one featuring Andy Vogel, both SMAs, Special Mission Aviators, and both of them being Loadmasters and CAAs. Unfortunately, halfway through those videos, we ended up experiencing some technical difficulties where we actually lost a good portion of the sound on those videos. So unfortunately, I'm going to list these as part ones on both of them, and go ahead and do a re-attack on a part 2 with them. So my apologies. They're great interviews. They're great stories that I want to capture for you guys. So once again, stick with me. It's less than 20 episodes, so I can afford to make a few of these screw ups just as long as I'm not making them later on. So thanks for your patience, and once again, we'll get these out in part 2s. So have a good one, and once again, like, subscribe, and share, and have a little bit of grace for my technical difficulties. Thank you so much. See you guys later. Bye.